It was a cold, gray morning when Maya, the young maid, woke up to the same routine she had grown used to over the past 3 years. She had come to the billionaire family's mansion with hope in her heart, thinking she could work hard, earn a decent living, and maybe, just maybe, have a better life. But little did she know, life had a cruel plan waiting for her. Maya had always been diligent, waking up before dawn to clean the sprawling mansion, cook meals, and take care of the children. Her days were long, filled with toil, but she never complained. She found pride in the little victories, like when the youngest child smiled at her or when the family's garden looked perfect under her care. However, things had begun to shift subtly over the last few months. It started with whispered conversations in the hallway, looks that lingered just a moment too long, and a chilling coldness in the matriarch's eyes. Maya didn't understand why at first, but soon she discovered the reason. She was pregnant. The father, a distant cousin of the family, had abandoned her when he found out. Maya had no one to turn to. She tried to keep it a secret, but as her belly began to grow, the whispers became louder, the looks colder. She felt herself becoming invisible in a house where she had once been valued. One evening, as Maya scrubbed the marble floors of the grand hall, the matriarch, Mrs. Hartley, approached her. Her face was stern, lips pressed tightly. "Maya, I think it's best if you leave," she said, voice low but icy. The children peeked from behind the living room curtains, sensing the tension, yet too afraid to intervene. Maya's heart dropped. She could feel the walls of the mansion closing in on her, suffocating her with rejection. She tried to speak, to explain, to beg for just a little compassion, but no words came out. She was dismissed, like a shadow that no longer belonged. Maya packed her few belongings that night. She left the mansion with tears streaming down her face, clutching her stomach, feeling the weight of both her unborn child and the heartbreak of being abandoned by the only family she had known. The streets were dark, empty, and cold, and for the first time in her life, she felt utterly alone. Every step she took echoed the fear in her heart, fear of how she would survive, fear of the judgment of strangers, and fear of the unknown that lay ahead. But as she sat on the curb, exhausted and shivering, a small spark of determination flickered in her eyes. Maya knew that she couldn't let this cruelty define her or her child. Somewhere deep inside, she held on to hope, though it felt fragile. She whispered to herself, "I will survive, somehow." Little did Maya know, her journey of pain and rejection was about to take a turn that no one in that mansion could have anticipated. A secret she had kept hidden for months was about to surface, and it would shock everyone in ways she could never imagine. But just as despair threatened to consume her, a stranger appeared on the empty street, carrying news that would change everything. Maya's eyes were fixed on the empty, dimly lit streets as the wind whipped her hair across her face. She hugged her stomach tightly, feeling the small, miraculous movements of the baby growing inside her. Each tiny kick reminded her that she wasn't truly alone, even if it felt like the world had turned its back on her. Her body shivered, not just from the cold, but from fear and uncertainty. How would she survive? Where would she sleep? What would she eat? The questions swirled in her mind, each one heavier than the last. Then, out of the shadows, a soft voice called her name. "Maya, are you okay?" She turned sharply, startled, and saw a woman approaching with a gentle smile and warm eyes. The woman was dressed simply, but there was a calm authority in her presence. "I saw what happened with the family," the woman said softly, gesturing to the mansion that loomed behind Maya. "You don't have to face this alone." Maya felt a mix of relief and apprehension. She had been abandoned, betrayed, and humiliated. How could anyone truly offer help? Who, who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "My name is Anika. I run a shelter for women who have nowhere to go. I can help you. We can find a safe place for you and your baby." For the first time in days, hope sparked in Maya's heart. She hesitated, fear gripping her, but the kindness in Anika's eyes was undeniable, and with nowhere else to turn, Maya nodded. "Okay, I'll trust you." They walked together through the quiet streets, the night air heavy with both fear and possibility. Anika spoke softly, asking Maya questions about her pregnancy, about her life, and about her dreams. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt heard. She shared details she had kept secret for months, her struggles at the mansion, the cruel words of the matriarch, the abandonment by the child's father, and the loneliness that had consumed her. Anika listened without interruption, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Maya," she said finally, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, "you are strong. You have been through so much, and yet you're still here. That strength will carry you and your child through even the darkest days." As they approached a small, warmly lit building tucked into a quiet alley, Maya's heart swelled with a mix of relief and apprehension. Could this really be the place where she could rebuild her life? Could she trust that someone would truly care for her and her unborn child? Anika opened the door, revealing a small but welcoming room with soft blankets, a warm bed, and the faint scent of fresh flowers. "This is your room," Anika said gently. "You can rest here. Tomorrow we'll talk about everything: how to care for you, your baby, and how to plan for the future." Maya sank onto the bed, exhaustion washing over her. For the first time since she had been abandoned, she allowed herself to cry freely. Tears of fear, sorrow, but also a fragile glimmer of hope. In that small room, she felt the first sense of safety she had known in weeks. But as she lay there, thinking of the mansion and the family that had rejected her, a new question entered her mind, one she hadn't dared to consider until now. Could she ever face them again? And if she did, what secret could she reveal that would shock them all? Little did Maya know, the secret she had carried silently inside her for months was about to surface, and when it did, it would shake the billionaire family to its core. Maya lay on the small bed in the shelter, her hands resting over her growing belly. The soft glow of the lamp cast shadows on the walls, but for the first time in weeks, the darkness outside didn't feel overwhelming. She could finally breathe, at least a little, and the warmth of the room made her feel safe. Yet her mind refused to rest. Thoughts of the billionaire family, their scornful faces, cold rejection, and the countless times they had humiliated her clung to her like a heavy fog. But Maya had something they didn't know, something powerful that she had kept hidden for months. She had a secret, one she hadn't dared to reveal, not even to herself in full clarity until now. It wasn't just the pregnancy that had startled them. It was something deeper, something that could change the course of every life connected to that mansion. As she traced the gentle curve of her belly with her fingers, memories of the past months came rushing back. The long nights she had spent working tirelessly, the cruel words of the matriarch, the judgmental stares from the family's children. She had endured it all, silently. And all the while, she had been preparing, silently, for a moment that might never come. But now, sitting in the safety of the shelter, she realized that moment had arrived. Anika knocked softly on the door, bringing a tray of warm soup. "Eat something, Maya. You need strength, and the baby needs it too," she said gently. Maya smiled weakly, grateful for the care she was receiving. As she sipped the soup, she couldn't help but think about the mansion, the grandeur, the luxury, and the coldness that hid behind polished walls. She had been powerless there, but now, with her secret, the balance was about to shift. Maya had kept a record of every injustice, every word of cruelty, and every act of neglect she had endured while working for the billionaire family. Hidden letters, photos, and small tokens of proof she had collected carefully over the months. But that wasn't all. She also carried within her the child of a family she had once served faithfully, a child who, in time, would carry the truth in ways no one could ignore. Her heart pounded as she imagined the day she would return. How would the matriarch react? How would the rest of the family respond? Maya didn't want revenge. No, her goal was far more powerful. She wanted acknowledgement, justice, and for the world to see the resilience and courage of a woman who had been discarded for daring to live. That night, Maya lay awake, her mind racing with plans. The secret she carried was not just hers. It belonged to the unborn child, to the truth of her existence, and to the lesson the family needed to learn. She whispered to herself in the darkness, "They will never see this coming, not a single one of them." Outside, the city slept, unaware of the storm that was quietly gathering. Inside the small shelter, a mother-to-be was readying herself, not just for the birth of her child, but for the moment that would shake the mansion to its very foundations. Little did the billionaire family know, the day was coming when Maya would return and her secret would be revealed in the most unexpected, shocking way imaginable. The days at the shelter passed slowly but steadily. Maya settled into a routine that balanced rest, nourishment, and preparation. Every morning, she would take a small walk in the garden behind the shelter, feeling the baby move inside her and reminding herself that she was no longer powerless. Each kick, each tiny movement felt like a promise, proof that she had something the billionaire family could never take away from her. Anika became more than just a helper. She became a confidant and a guide. She taught Maya how to care for herself and the baby, how to build her strength, and how to think strategically about the day she would face the family again. "You've been through so much," Anika said one morning as they prepared breakfast together. "But strength isn't just surviving, Maya. It's knowing what you deserve and taking it when the time is right." Maya nodded, feeling a quiet fire ignite within her. The thought of the mansion, of the cold stares and harsh words still made her heart ache, but now it was mixed with determination. She no longer feared the family. They had underestimated her for months, dismissed her like she was nothing, and in their arrogance, they had forgotten one critical thing. Maya was not just carrying herself, she was carrying a secret that could not be ignored. She began to plan carefully. Every visit to the mansion would need a purpose, a way to deliver her secret so that it would resonate with the family and the household staff. Maya worked with Anika to organize her evidence, photographs of neglect, documents proving her loyalty, letters she had written but never sent, and small mementos of her work in the mansion. Each piece represented a piece of her story, a story the family had ignored for far too long. Yet Maya also knew that patience was her greatest weapon. The pregnancy had taught her endurance, the shelter had given her perspective, and her heart had developed a resolve sharper than any anger. She couldn't rush the moment, couldn't allow desperation to cloud the impact of her revelation. Every step needed to be precise, every interaction meaningful. At night, she would sit by the small window of her room, tracing her growing belly and whispering to the child inside her. "Soon, you and I will show them who we are," she murmured, tears streaming down her face. "They'll understand, even if they hate themselves for it." That quiet vow became a ritual, one that strengthened her resolve with each passing day. But while Maya prepared carefully, the world outside the shelter remained unaware of the storm that was slowly approaching. The family went about their lives, oblivious to the truth gathering beyond their mansion walls. They assumed she had vanished, that the pregnant maid had disappeared into nothingness. Yet with every passing day, Maya's secret grew heavier, stronger, and closer to the moment it would erupt in a way that none of them could ignore. Weeks had passed since Maya had settled into the shelter. Her body had grown heavier, her steps slower, but her resolve had only grown stronger. Every day she looked into the mirror, tracing the curve of her belly, and reminding herself that she carried within her a truth the mansion could never dismiss. She was no longer just a powerless maid. She was a mother-to-be with a voice that demanded to be heard. One crisp morning, Maya learned that the family's annual charity event was being held at the mansion. It was the perfect opportunity. The event would gather not only the family, but also their close associates and the entire household staff. Everyone who had ignored her, mocked her, or dismissed her presence would be there. Her heart raced at the thought, but for the first time, it was not fear, it was anticipation. Anika helped Maya prepare, ensuring she looked confident yet unassuming. Her clothing was simple but elegant, her hair neatly tied back. "Remember," Anika said softly, "they don't know your strength yet. You don't have to shout it. Let your presence speak for itself." Maya nodded, a quiet determination burning in her eyes. She carried with her the small bundle of evidence, neatly organized in a folder. Photos, letters, and documents that captured the truth of her service and the cruelty she had endured. Arriving at the mansion, Maya felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. She watched from a distance as the family laughed and mingled, completely unaware of her presence. Her chest tightened as she spotted Mrs. Hartley, the matriarch, smiling arrogantly at the guests. Maya's lips pressed into a thin line. Soon, they would all understand that their arrogance had blinded them to the strength they had dismissed. As she entered the grand hall, whispers began to spread among the staff who recognized her. Their eyes widened with curiosity and a hint of fear. Maya moved gracefully, holding her head high, the evidence folder clutched firmly in her hands. When a young servant finally whispered, "Maya, what are you doing here?" she smiled faintly. "I'm here to remind everyone what they tried to forget," she replied softly. The family, oblivious at first, began to notice her. Mrs. Hartley's eyes narrowed, a frown forming as she recognized the pregnant woman she had cast aside. Gasps of shock followed as Maya moved further into the crowd, her presence commanding attention without a single raised voice. The whispers grew louder. The children, curious and confused, stared at her, unsure of how to react. And then, in a quiet corner of the hall, Maya opened the folder. Photographs, letters, and evidence of every slight, every insult, every unjust act were revealed. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to her, every heart stilled, and every mind raced to understand the courage standing before them. No one could have expected what came next, because Maya's secret wasn't just evidence, it was a revelation that would shake the billionaire family to its very core. The grand hall was silent, the kind of silence that made even the chandeliers above seem to hang in suspense. Maya stood in the center, her hands steady, clutching the folder that held the story of her life, the truth that the billionaire family had tried to erase. Her heart beat rapidly, not with fear, but with the strength she had cultivated through months of struggle and endurance. Mrs. Hartley's eyes narrowed, disbelief flashing across her face. "Maya, what is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp, though unsteady. Maya took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice calm but unwavering. "This is everything you ignored. Every insult, every dismissal, every cruel word you said or implied because of who I am and because of the child I carry." Gasps echoed throughout the room. The staff whispered among themselves, eyes wide. Even the children, who had once hidden behind curtains to avoid Maya, now stared in astonishment. Maya opened the folder, revealing photographs of her hard work, letters she had written but never sent, and small notes that documented every humiliation she had endured. She held up a tiny pair of baby shoes, and this is the reason you will finally understand. The room fell into stunned silence. The family, who had once thought themselves untouchable, looked at her with a mixture of shock, guilt, and fear. The evidence was undeniable, the proof tangible. Maya's voice wavered slightly, but her resolve never faltered. You abandoned me when I needed you the most. You judged me when I had no one. But I survived. I am strong, and soon my child will carry a piece of your conscience as a reminder that cruelty has consequences." Mrs. Hartley's lips trembled, her hands clenching and unclenching as she tried to find words. The patriarch, Mr. Hartley, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "Maya, we didn't realize." His voice trailed off, powerless against the weight of truth standing before him. Maya held her gaze steadily. "It's not about realizing," she said firmly. "It's about seeing and understanding the lives you've affected. It's about acknowledging that a woman, any woman, deserves respect, kindness, and dignity. I'm here to remind you of that, and to show you that I will never be invisible again." The air was thick with tension. Every guest, every staff member, every family member was witnessing not just a revelation, but a transformation. Maya, the maid they had dismissed, had become a symbol of courage, resilience, and unyielding hope. And in that moment, it became clear that the billionaire family would never forget her, or the lessons she brought with her. But even as shock filled the room, a deeper challenge was about to emerge, one that would test Maya's courage and the family's capacity for redemption. The grand hall buzzed with a tense energy, though no one dared to speak. Maya's revelation had left everyone frozen, caught between disbelief and guilt. Even the most confident members of the billionaire family, who had once treated her with cold superiority, now fumbled for words. Their smiles were gone, replaced by the realization of how deeply their arrogance and cruelty had affected another human being. Mrs. Hartley sank into a chair, her hands pressed over her face. Tears threatened to fall, but pride kept her stiff. She had spent years maintaining the illusion of control, never imagining that someone she had dismissed as insignificant could one day confront her with undeniable truth. I never knew," she whispered, though even she knew it was an inadequate excuse. Maya's eyes softened for just a moment, not out of forgiveness, but out of understanding. She knew the family could feel the weight of shame now, and she also knew that true change would take more than just words. The patriarch, Mr. Hartley, stood quietly, staring at the folder. His face reflected the conflict of a man who had lived in power but had never been challenged like this. He opened his mouth, then closed it, unsure whether to apologize or remain silent. The staff, who had often watched Maya toil without recognition, now stared with awe and admiration. Whispers of respect and disbelief spread like wildfire. She endured everything, and she's still standing. Maya took a slow breath, steadying herself. The secret she carried was more than just evidence. It was a testament to resilience, courage, and the strength of motherhood. She looked around the room, locking eyes with each family member. "You abandoned me when I needed support. You judged me when I was vulnerable. And yet here I stand, not broken, not defeated, but stronger than ever. I carried on because I had to. And now I carry this child who will one day know the truth of what you thought you could erase." The children of the family, who had once watched her with curiosity or indifference, now felt the gravity of the moment. Their innocence clashed with the lesson before them. Power and wealth could not erase humanity, and pride could never silence truth. Even the youngest child clutched a toy nervously, sensing the tension and understanding that this was not just a story, it was a lesson for life. But as Maya's voice grew firmer, a subtle tension began to stir within the adults. The family was being forced to reckon with more than guilt. They were being challenged to act, to reflect, and perhaps to change. And yet, beneath the surface, there was a deeper fear. What else did Maya hold? The secret that had rocked the room was only the beginning. What more did she know? What more had she prepared? And what more might she reveal that could shatter their carefully built world?
As Maya stepped back, letting the silence sink in, a quiet murmur ran through the hall, and in that moment the family realized the true revelation was yet to come, and it would leave them forever changed.
The room remained quiet, but the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Maya stood tall, her posture unwavering, as the billionaire family struggled to digest the truth she had laid before them. Every word she had spoken, every piece of evidence she had revealed, had pierced the armor they had built around themselves. Pride, wealth, and power now felt fragile, almost meaningless, in the face of a courage they had dismissed for far too long. Mrs. Hartley finally lifted her gaze, her eyes red from the tears she refused to let fall. "Maya, how did you survive?" she asked, her voice trembling. Maya's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Survive?" she said softly. "I didn't just survive. I prepared. Every insult, every dismissal, every moment you thought I was powerless, I turned it into strength. And now I am here to make sure the world sees it." The patriarch, Mr. Hartley, shifted uncomfortably. His hands fidgeted with the cuff of his sleeve, and he glanced nervously at his family. The other members of the household, who had once enjoyed the illusion of superiority over Maya, now felt exposed, almost vulnerable. She had turned their judgment into proof of her resilience, their indifference into a testament of her perseverance. Maya opened her folder again, carefully presenting a letter she had written months ago, but never sent. It was addressed to the family, but it wasn't angry or spiteful. It was honest. Every word spoke of pain endured, lessons learned, and the unwavering hope of a woman who refused to be invisible. The room grew colder with each line, the words cutting deeper than any confrontation could. One of the younger members of the family, a cousin who had often mocked Maya behind her back, finally spoke, his voice barely audible. I didn't know." Maya shook her head slowly. "That's exactly the point. You didn't know. You refused to see. And now the truth is here, undeniable and alive. I carry it in my hands and in my body, and one day my child will carry it too." The tension in the room thickened. The family realized that this wasn't just about humiliation or embarrassment. It was about accountability. Maya's courage had forced them to face a reality they had avoided for years. Their past actions, their dismissive words, and their cold attitudes had consequences far beyond what they imagined. And now those consequences were standing before them, alive and unbroken. As Maya's gaze swept across the room, a quiet determination burned in her eyes. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning, and the family, for the first time, felt powerless. They had underestimated her, ignored her, and rejected her, but now the scales were about to tip. Yet, even as shock and guilt gripped the room, Maya had one final revelation waiting, one that would not only test the family's conscience, but would leave them utterly speechless. The air in the grand hall felt heavy, almost electric, as Maya took a deep breath and prepared to deliver the truth the family had not anticipated. Every eye was on her, wide with shock, fear, or guilt, and every mind raced, trying to understand the quiet strength of the young woman standing before them. She knew that this moment was more than a confrontation. It was a turning point. Maya's hand rested over her belly, the life inside her a constant reminder of what she had endured and what she was about to reveal. "There's one more thing you all need to know," she began, her voice calm but resonant. The family stiffened, sensing that this revelation would cut deeper than anything they had yet experienced. "This child I carry is not just a part of me, it is proof. Proof of the love, resilience, and hope that you tried to erase, and it will change everything for you." Whispers ran through the room. Mrs. Hartley clutched her pearls, her face pale. What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Maya stepped closer, holding the folder open for all to see. "This child will inherit the truth of your actions, the neglect, the judgment, the abandonment. But more than that, it carries the hope of a future built on justice, kindness, and recognition of those you underestimated. You dismissed me, but you cannot dismiss this truth, and one day you will see it unfold." Her words landed like a hammer, each sentence heavy with meaning. The patriarch's eyes widened, and the younger family members shuffled uncomfortably. This was no longer just about embarrassment or guilt. It was about accountability, the kind that could not be ignored. The staff, who had watched in silence for years, now looked at Maya with admiration and newfound respect. She had transformed her pain into a revelation that no one could deny. Maya's voice softened as she continued, but the strength behind her words remained unshakable. "I am not here for revenge," she said. "I am here to show you that every action has consequences. Every word, every judgment, every dismissal. It matters. And this child is the living proof that courage and hope cannot be silenced." A stunned silence filled the room. The family, for the first time, saw her not as a servant, not as someone they could manipulate or ignore, but as a human being who had endured, survived, and now commanded respect. The weight of their past arrogance pressed down on them, and it was unbearable. They could not deny the strength, the dignity, and the truth standing before them. And in that quiet tension, the magnitude of Maya's secret became clear. She was not just reclaiming her own dignity, she was preparing to rewrite the family's understanding of respect, courage, and humanity. They had been blind, but now nothing could shield them from the lesson she carried inside her, heartbeat by heartbeat, kick by kick. But even as the family struggled to comprehend the truth, an unexpected twist was about to unfold, one that would test Maya's courage and force the family to confront their own hearts in ways they never imagined. The hall was still, but the tension was palpable. Every member of the billionaire family felt the weight of Maya's words pressing down on them. Her secret, the child she carried, the proof of their negligence and cruelty, and the story of her endurance had changed the room. Yet, the true test was just beginning. Maya knew that revealing the truth was only part of the journey. How the family would respond would define whether they had learned anything at all. Mrs. Hartley finally spoke, her voice shaky. "Maya, we..." She stopped, unable to form a coherent sentence. Her pride had been stripped away, leaving vulnerability in its place. Maya's eyes softened slightly, not in forgiveness, but in the quiet understanding that real change comes from within, not from fear. "I know you didn't expect me to return," Maya said, her tone calm but firm. "And I know you've been living in your own world, believing that wealth and power could erase mistakes. But real strength doesn't lie in money. It lies in how you treat others, especially those who have no power to defend themselves." The patriarch shifted uncomfortably. We didn't realize we were wrong," he said finally, though the words felt hollow. Maya shook her head. "Words aren't enough. Actions are. And that's why I'm here, to see if you can act with integrity, to see if you can face your mistakes honestly, and to understand that abandoning someone in need has consequences." The room grew quieter. The staff, who had once been silent witnesses to Maya's suffering, now watched with hope, almost holding their breath. The children stared, absorbing the gravity of the moment. Every eye in the mansion was on her, every heart forced to reckon with a truth they had ignored for years. Maya held the folder of evidence close. "You have two choices," she continued, her voice steady, carrying both authority and quiet warning. "You can continue to ignore the truth and pretend nothing happened, Or you can take responsibility, acknowledge your mistakes, and do something to correct the past. What you choose now will define you forever. The family exchanged uneasy glances, their silence speaking volumes. For the first time, they were no longer in control. Maya had reclaimed her power, not through anger, not through confrontation alone, but through the undeniable weight of truth and the courage to face them despite her own vulnerability. Her hand rested lightly on her belly, the child inside kicking gently, as if affirming the power of the moment. "This child will see the world differently," Maya said softly, yet with conviction. "It will know the importance of courage, integrity, and hope. And it will remind you that neglect and cruelty cannot erase what is just, what is true, and what is human." The family sat in stunned silence, grappling with guilt, shame, and the weight of realization. Maya's secret had not only shocked them, it had begun to awaken a conscience that had long been dormant. The tension in the grand hall was suffocating, yet Maya stood unwavering, a quiet strength radiating from her very presence. The family had been shaken to their core, grappling with guilt and disbelief, but Maya knew the moment wasn't complete. Change, real change, required more than shock. It required action, support, and understanding. And unexpectedly, that support came from within the mansion itself. Thomas, the family's longtime butler, had watched Maya's journey in silence for years. He had seen her hard work, her sacrifices, and the humiliation she endured at the hands of the family. He had been powerless then, bound by duty and fear, but the sight of her returning, strong and resolute, stirred something within him. Thomas stepped forward, his face lined with concern and respect. "Mrs. Hartley, everyone," he began, his voice steady but deliberate. "I have witnessed the courage of this young woman for years. I have seen her struggle silently, and I cannot stay silent any longer. Maya has done nothing but give her best, even when treated unfairly. She deserves our respect, our acknowledgement, and our support." The family froze. This was unexpected. For years, Thomas had remained loyal, cautious, and compliant, but his words now added weight to Maya's revelation. It wasn't just her voice anymore, it was backed by someone who had seen the truth all along. Maya allowed herself a small nod, grateful for the ally she hadn't anticipated. The room felt slightly lighter, as though Thomas's acknowledgement had begun to shift the energy, nudging the family toward reflection and perhaps redemption. The children looked on curiously, sensing a subtle change in the atmosphere, and understanding that Maya was not alone and that justice, in some form, was beginning to take shape. Mrs. Hartley's lips trembled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The patriarch's eyes softened, his stern facade giving way to a quiet awareness. Even the younger members of the family, who had often been indifferent, now looked at Maya with a mix of admiration and cautious respect. Maya's voice remained calm, measured. "I am not here for revenge," she repeated, "but for recognition, for understanding, and for a future where no one has to endure what I have endured silently. You have a chance now to choose integrity, to acknowledge your mistakes, and to act with compassion." Thomas stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder. "She has carried this family's mistakes with her for months," he said, his tone firm. "It's time we all take responsibility. We have a choice to make. Will we change, or will we remain blind to the truth?" The room held its collective breath. Maya felt the baby move gently, as if sensing the pivotal moment approaching. The energy shifted from shock to contemplation, and though the family still grappled with guilt, the path forward, though uncertain, was now visible. Maya had not only revealed her secret, but she had also begun to gather support for the change she deserved. But as the family struggled to process their conscience, an unexpected challenge emerged, one that threatened to derail everything Maya had worked for. The room was thick with tension. Maya stood tall, her hands resting lightly on her belly, feeling the small kicks of her unborn child. Every movement seemed to echo her determination, a silent reminder of the life she was protecting and the courage she had nurtured over months of struggle. The family remained silent, but their eyes betrayed the storm of emotions raging within them: shock, guilt, fear, and perhaps the first glimmers of understanding. Suddenly, one of the family members, the eldest son who had often mocked Maya behind closed doors, stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. "You think you can come here and accuse us after everything we've done for you?" His words were sharp, defensive, but Maya did not flinch. She had expected resistance. She had prepared for confrontation. "Accuse?" Maya's voice was calm, steady, yet it carried an unshakable authority. "No, I am not accusing. I am revealing the truth. You dismissed me when I needed support. You judged me when I was vulnerable. But this isn't about blame. It's about recognition. It's about understanding that power and wealth do not justify cruelty." The eldest son's face twisted in frustration. "We didn't know. We didn't realize." Maya interrupted, her eyes locking onto his. "Exactly. That's the point. You didn't know, you didn't see, and now the truth is here, undeniable, and it will remain whether you choose to acknowledge it or not." The patriarch, Mrs. Hartley, and the rest of the family exchanged uneasy glances. Thomas, the butler, remained close to Maya, a silent pillar of support, reminding the family that Maya was no longer alone and that her courage had allies. Slowly, the anger in the room began to shift, replaced by introspection and a dawning awareness of the consequences of their past actions. Maya opened the folder once more, showing letters, photographs, and notes that documented months of neglect, humiliation, and hard work they had ignored. The air felt heavy with realization. The evidence was undeniable, and the room was filled with a mixture of shame and awe. The children, who had watched silently, began to understand that respect was earned not by wealth or title, but by recognizing humanity in others. Maya's voice softened as she took a final step forward. "I am not here to punish you. I am here to remind you that your choices have consequences, and that even in the darkest moments, courage, hope, and integrity cannot be silenced. My child and I will live by these truths, and one day you will see that dismissing someone's humanity carries a cost that cannot be ignored." The family sat in stunned silence. No one spoke. The weight of the confrontation pressed down on every heart in the room. And yet, beneath the shock and guilt, a subtle shift began, a possibility of change, an acknowledgement of past mistakes, and a glimpse of redemption. Maya had not just revealed her secret, she had reclaimed her power and forced the family to confront the consequences of their actions. And as the room slowly settled, a final, unexpected twist awaited Maya, one that would not only secure her victory, but also ensure that her unborn child would never know neglect again. The grand hall was quiet now, but the air felt lighter. The shock, guilt, and tension that had gripped the room hours earlier had begun to give way to reflection and understanding. Maya stood tall, her hand resting over her belly, feeling the baby move gently as if affirming the journey she had endured and the strength she had shown. Mrs. Hartley, her pride softened, finally found the courage to speak. "Maya, we have been blind," she admitted, her voice trembling. "We treated you as less than you are, and for that I am truly sorry. You have shown strength and courage that we could never have imagined." The patriarch nodded solemnly. We cannot undo the past, but we can acknowledge it, and we can choose to do better, not just for you, but for the lessons this child will carry into the future. Maya's eyes softened, though she remained composed. I don't seek apologies, she said. I seek understanding, recognition of the choices you made, and a promise that no one will face such neglect again. That is the true power of this revelation, the knowledge that courage can demand justice without hatred. Thomas, the butler, stepped forward, a proud smile on his face. Maya, you have inspired all of us. Your strength reminds us that humanity and compassion must guide every action, regardless of wealth or status. The family exchanged glances, their expressions slowly shifting from guilt to resolve. The eldest son, who had argued earlier, lowered his head in humility. I understand now, he admitted quietly. We have failed, and you have shown us what true courage looks like. For the first time, Maya felt a sense of closure. The mansion, once a place of rejection and cruelty, now seemed full of possibility. She had faced the family, revealed her secret, and reclaimed her dignity, not through anger, but through courage and truth. The child growing inside her would enter a world that had witnessed the power of resilience, the strength of hope, and the importance of standing up for oneself no matter the odds. As Maya left the grand hall that evening, Thomas walked beside her, a supportive presence. Outside, the sky was painted with the soft hues of sunset, symbolizing not only the end of a difficult chapter, but also the promise of a new beginning. Maya breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. She knew that the journey ahead would still have challenges, but now she faced it with hope, dignity, and the knowledge that she had reclaimed her life. And in the quiet moments, as she felt the baby move within her, she smiled. This was more than survival, it was triumph. The billionaire family had been confronted with truth, and Maya had not only protected her unborn child, but also shown them the true meaning of courage, integrity, and compassion. The story of abandonment had ended, but the story of resilience, hope, and new beginnings had just begun. Sometimes, the strongest voices are the ones we least expect. Courage and truth can move mountains, heal hearts, and change lives, even in the face of betrayal. Maya's journey reminds us that dignity, hope, and integrity are never lost, even when the world tries to take them away.